Y'all, hey, welcome back to This Week from Rockdale. I'm Danielle, your guest host for the evening. Some of you may know me as Tech Danielle from the TPS Report Live on Rumble. Some of you may know me as Fit Danielle from the Fit Life with Danielle over on YouTube. But I am so happy to be here. I am your guest host for this evening, and I will be interviewing Larry Cox. I guess what you need to know about me, the reason that I have been invited to interview Larry is that I am a teacher. I taught in public schools for 12 years, and I've taught privately on various platforms and in various settings since then. So, my total school experience between public schools, teaching privately, and teaching in college has been somewhere north of 20 years. So I feel like I am uniquely qualified to talk to Larry and to interview him about his aspirations to join the Rockdale County Board of Education. So let's bring Larry on and let's get started. So, Larry, you out there?
You
There
was
you
just a
are.
little delay in pushing the button, but I am here. Thank you,
Awesome.
Danielle.
Hey, buddy. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Larry, you've had a busy weekend.
Have had a busy weekend, but it's been a good weekend, and I actually consider it the kickoff of the campaign in sorts. I've been campaigning since actually beginning of the year, but sort of official when you go out here and mix it up a little bit with candidates.
Yeah, I think all of you have done a great job. I think that the citizens of Rockdale County have some great choices out there. And Larry, you may remember I voted for you for Board of Education years ago. Do you remember? I voted
I rem-
for you for Board of Education, and I voted for Tucker Cox for Trash Commissioner, maybe?
no, Tucker ran against Richard Reed for judge.
Yeah, but remember, I was voting here in
Oh yeah, you
Hermantown,
in
Minnesota,
Herman
so I
County, you
was
voted
writing
for
y'all in.
Tucker for you voting for
Yes,
trash commissioner, yeah,
yes.
and then Judge Cuthbert was actually concerned that Tucker was going to run against him this year, and I told him he's not going to. He's going to dust the robe off in 2 years and run against Richard Reed again, but he will not be challenging Judge Cuthbert.
Good. Judge Cuthbert seems like a good guy. I watched that interview and he seems like a real good man. So hopefully people will support him. Well, Larry, let's jump in. I have a lot to ask you about. So you know what? Is it okay if we just jump into it, or do you have some housekeeping before we get started? You want to say hey to your friends?
Well, let's go ahead and say hey to him. Let's say Marie Withers is here, and we've got Jill Oden. We have Mary Boysworth, Joey Williams, we got Charlotte Gellert, we got Judy Bond, Mike Terry, and as usual, Jim, what I like to ask people to do is share and like the show, and that way, they share and like it. We build the audience because this is important. Board of Education races are really important, and they don't get the attention that they should because
Right.
we talk about how important they are. Let's be real. The Rockdale County Board of Education has over $200 million budget, the biggest budget of any government entity in Rockdale County.
Right. And you know what, Larry, that actually leads us into my first question. As I mentioned, I'm a teacher. I was a public school teacher for years, and I saw principals in my classroom. I saw assistant principals. I saw lots of folks in and out of my classroom. I never once saw a member of the Board of Education in my classroom or in the school. So can you take just a minute and tell us and explain to me, what does the Board of Education even really do?
A person on the Board of Education, they're policy people, right? So they make sure that the policies and procedures that the school system operates by are enacted and they're in place. They also hire and fire the superintendent. They approve the budgets, right? But you
Okay.
got to remember, I just mentioned one thing. They hire and fire the superintendent. Okay. And you mentioned about them not coming to the classroom. I overheard a conversation yesterday. One of the board members was telling some people there they're not, by state law, they're not allowed to go to the school. Daniel, I'm going to tell you that's false. That's not true. They are allowed to go to the school. They're just not allowed to interfere in the day-to-day operation or anything like that. But board members are allowed to go to the school. And actually, I did an ORR. I asked the state to show me a statute of where it says, because the superintendent has told board members by state law they're not allowed to. They're just making things up. They
Right.
do this to intimidate board members. But the board has a lot of authority that they don't invoke because the superintendents intimidate them by what I call the Superintendent Protection Act. I actually have one right here in front of me. This is actually the ethics policy. And in that ethics policy, it clearly states they're not allowed to interfere with the day-to-day operations. They support the superintendent in his day-to-day operation. But in there's actually one thing in here that actually has a state statute behind it. The rest of this is don't have a state statute. It's all what they expect. But this one,
Okay.
a local board of education shall not adopt or follow any code of ethics which prevents the member of such board from discussing freely with public actions of such board outside a board meeting. This shall not apply to any matter that is discussed in executive session or exempt from the disclosure. And this is under Georgia OCGA 50-1872. Georgia law prohibits a board of education from preventing board members from having open meetings and dialogue with constituents. But yet this superintendent and superintendents before this have sent the Board of Education county attorney, have sicked them on members for having discussions with constituents. Now, if I'm elected, I'm going to set appointments and I'm going to go to the school system. Let me ask you, Danielle, if I'm a member of a board and my main job is to hire and fire the superintendent, how do I know he's doing his job unless I can go and observe a school and see how things are actually going? Do you think I can actually do that by the reports that are being presented to me at a board meeting? Do I need to actually be on the ground and observe?
I think you need to be on the ground and observe, and I don't think that you can trust members, like employees of the schools and the school system, to come to you and report to you, because I think they'll fear retribution. I had that conversation with somebody today about, even at open meetings, I don't think I, as a teacher, would have stood up at an open meeting and said something that was counter to the culture of the school, or counter to something that, especially that the superintendent had done, because I would have feared that, if not immediate retribution, that there would be retribution come contract renewal time. And especially in Georgia, and I know that there are so many bad things that unions do, but one thing that unions do is they protect teachers from superintendents. Unfortunately, they protect bad teachers sometimes, but other times they also protect good teachers. So in Georgia, where there is no union to protect the teachers, I never would have stood up in public and said anything to or about my superintendent for fear of retribution. So no, I don't think there's any way other than boots on the ground, go and see what's happening in the schools.
I do want to just, if I can add something to that.
Please.
I have people who are supporting me right now who are in the educational system who have asked me not to share things on their Facebook page, to not mention them, to not let people know that they support me because they're afraid of losing their jobs.
It is.
And it's because the superintendents in Georgia are that powerful. They are
Right.
that powerful.
Yep.
But and they intimidate board members, and they just tell board members things that are not true. Danielle, you've known me for a long time, right?
I have.
I'm not one of these people that somebody can just tell me some nonsense and I'm not going to go research it and find out the truth.
Right.
Then the first thing I'm going to do after I find out the truth is challenge that nonsense openly and defy them and say, this is reality. This is the law. Now go ahead and try to get me in trouble over this, and let's see who looks foolish.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Okay.
So as a board member, I will be going to schools. I will not be going to interfere. I will not be going to bother anybody, but I will be going to observe to see if what these reports we're getting in the at the board meetings are accurate. Because I can tell. I mean, I've been in the work field forever. I do spot checks and visits on my crews all the time. People, they give me reports and say, this is what's going on. Within 20 minutes of being on the job site, I know if that's reality or make believe.
Right. Let's get into the muck and the mire here. So as I mentioned to you, I've talked to lots of people, and I don't live in Rockdale County. I'm in Minnesota. But the reason that you've invited me, and thank you for trusting me to have this conversation with you on your show. I'm honored by you trusting me to do this with you. But because I'm not in Rockdale County, I've done lots of research. I've read articles. I've looked at numbers. I've looked at the pass fail rates. I've looked at the test scores of Rockdale schools, and I've talked to lots of people in Rockdale County. So I have some some questions from your constituents, and I was concerned. You know what, let's clear this up just quickly. I was concerned that the people that I talked about might not be your actual constituents, because I didn't know exactly where they live and what area you covered. And you explained to me what about the school board that you represent. What?
I represent the whole county. It is an at-large position, even though it's designated as post one. That's just to identify your seat. It's we do Rockdale County does not have any districts or any geographical areas that any county elected official represents from any level, whether it be at the county commission level or the Board of Education level. We are all elected at large, and we represent every citizen from the top to the bottom of Rockdale County.
Fabulous. So that makes me feel so much better about my questions, because I know now that they are absolutely coming from people that you represent. So I had some conversations with some folks who, they are like us. They are, sort of plugged into the issues and things that are going on, and they know about the condition of the Rockdale County school system. But I had some concerns, and they shared my concerns, because a lot of what I read was about the accolades that the school system's getting and that the Board of Ed got and that certain students get. So it made it sound like the schools are doing great and that things are going really well. So I asked people, do your friends realize that Rockdale schools are in trouble, or do a lot of them think that things are okay? And they said, oh, no, no, no. They think things are fine. They think we're doing great. They think this, things are going well. First of all, do you think that there is a large group of people, or a large contingent in Rockdale County, that thinks the schools are doing okay?
You know what? There are more that think they're doing okay than there should actually realize they're not. But over the last several years, things have gotten so bad that that number is swung.
Okay.
More people do realize now the condition of the school system.
And
And
that was going to be my question. I'm sorry. That in order to fix a problem, you have to acknowledge that you have a problem, right? So what can you do? Like, how can you help these people understand I mean, Rockdale schools are in trouble, right? Like the level of, so we call it students not reading at grade level. Y'all, that's probably close. Illiteracy is a harsh word to use, but I mean, they're at least by definition not literate for their age, right? So just that is concerning, not even to mention the math.
can I ask you a question, Danielle?
Please
When you
do.
did your research,
Mhm.
which organizations did you use to get your statistics from?
I looked at the state website, their well,
You looked at the Georgia the
I did.
Department of, okay. Okay, and then I looked at that. I looked at the rock, and I looked at a couple of other independent watchdog organizations who provide, and I think if did you notice the same thing that I did, that Rockdale County provides, they actually have a rosier view of the numbers than what the numbers actually are.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to
And
clarify that.
they like to use graduation rate. Rockdale County likes to talk about graduation rate, which, Alex, my co-host Alex and I have had a run-in about this number on multiple occasions. I think that's a fluff number. I don't think that number makes any sense. I think it's made up. I think you can make it look how you want it to look. Um, I think it's hard to quantify graduation rate, because it's hard to figure out who counts as a Rockdale County graduate and who doesn't. Like, it's not just the number of people that cross your stage on graduation night, because it's how many graduate versus how many should have graduated. Right? And then the question is that how many graduated is an easy number, right? That's a fixed number. But then the question is, where do you get that how many should have graduated number from? Do you start at freshman year of that graduating class? Well, that's not fair, because some folks, some things happen, some graduate early, some get a GED. Do those count? Some move. If they move and they don't graduate where they go, does that count against your numbers? What if they move junior year and they're already not reading at grade level and they move to, say, Gwinnett County? Is that now a Gwinnett County number? So it's just such an amorphous number that I think that it's meaningless, and I'm sorry, I know I'm supposed to be interviewing you, not talking to you, but I feel like that's one of those numbers that Rockdale uses to make their struggling and I'm trying not to use offensive words because I know that we have viewers whose kids are in these schools, and I don't wanna be offensive towards the teachers who work very hard every day. There are
I,
teachers who are probably watching who are getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go teach in these schools, and I respect them, and my heart breaks for them because they want their sweet babies to do well, and they you know.
Daniel, I define it as this: that this superintendent and this board are more concerned about presenting a perception of education in Rockdale County rather than the actual state of education in Rockdale County. You mentioned just now about that difficulty of coming up with these numbers. I
Mhm.
know the superintendent just recently attended a Rotary meeting, and he did a presentation a few weeks ago, and he contradicted some numbers that were out there. I'll just give you an example. Like there was a number out there by one of these reporting agencies that said that only 23% of elementary students, that's K through 5, were reading at level. And he came back and said, no, it's 58%. Well, even if you use his numbers, that's still 42 children out of 100 who are illiterate. Let's just use the word, right? Let's
Right.
use the word. Okay.
Right.
So, and he was, of course, he doesn't like those other numbers. And then this is a statement that he made. And somebody asked him, well, how did they come up with those numbers? They said, well, you got to understand. And it's a little bit crazy because you just made some points with this. He said, sometimes you got to massage and manipulate the numbers to come up with the ones that you need. And you get that, don't you, Danielle?
And dude, the number he was aiming for was 42%. Like or whatever it was, the
Yeah,
not achieving at grade level was
40% are not at grade level,
yeah,
right? So, and but you're right. I
literally
mean, but that's 42% of, and these are his numbers that he says these are the numbers,
yeah,
right?
that he thinks are good. He was
Yeah,
bragging about those numbers.
and but this is the thing about it. Okay, we go down to the high school. The high school, the number is 41% that are not when they're
That's
graduating, they are not reading and write. As I give the example, you've got these young men that come into my office, and it takes them an hour and a half to 2 hours to fill out a job application. Danielle, do you know what the number one question we get when people come in and fill the application out? These young men, there's one word on there, and they'll read that, and they know how to say the word, but they ask us, what does this word mean? Reference. They ask you what the word reference means. And, and I tell everybody in the office, even whatever, I said, you do not belittle anybody who comes in here. This
right.
is not their fault.
Yep,
It is
100%.
not their fault. It's the fault of those who have supposedly been educating these kids. I said, we will help them. So well, that who recommended you to come here, or do you have somebody who will say that you will be a good employee? You put that person down. So we explain to them but the number one question, what does this word mean? And it's all the
Heartbreaking.
time, Danielle, all the time.
So this actually flows straight into my next point, which is um so and I know that I'm sure that you know of this, the broken window theory, which is a theory that was postulated in 1982 by Wilson and Kelleg. And the idea was that in an area with broken windows, the broken windows in the area give the impression of sort of chaos and disorder. And from that, crime would develop. So there would be more crime in that area. And this is a theory that just blew up. Um, Police use it, other folks use it, and I have seen it applied in education. And the idea is that where failure or this so if failure is seen as the broken window and that broken window is accepted, then it's seen as okay in the area and there will be more broken windows, right? Chaos, more failure. And I think that that's possibly what we're dealing with in Rockdale County, right? A broken window theory that it's a culture of failure. Justin talked about it in the meeting that you were just in, the toxic environment that is the school system. First of all, do you believe that there is actually this culture of failure where 41% reading not achieving is accepted and that it's leading to more failure? And if so, how can you break that? How can you? change it.
Daniel, I actually think you and I actually have looked at other numbers, and we actually think it's probably more like 70%
Yeah.
than the 41%. And that's reality, because what we see, and I think you're right. I think the board and the superintendent are actually have fallen into the broken window theory, because you can go to any board meeting and they bring out the AP students, the gifted students, the magnet school. Those are the 2,800 top students of the 15,000 students that attend the Rockdale County school system. So when you talk about the accolades and what accomplishment these top 10% are doing, and you're not talking about what the rest of the 90% are
Right.
not doing, then you're hiding the broken window.
Yes.
You're hiding the failure. So the Rockdale County school system right now, with how they do their board meetings, how they do their presentations, how they try to shut board members up that ask questions. Like my opponent, first thing she started saying was, and that's what they're starting out there in the community. If I get on the board, I'm a rabble raiser. We'll lose our accreditation. We're going to lose our accreditation because kids can't write, read, and do math.
Right.
That's why we're going to lose our accreditation. We're going to lose the accreditation because they're not going to pass test scores, and they're not going to be able to do these things. Not because you have a board member who is questioning the competency of the superintendent.
Right.
But like I said yesterday, this group of individuals, the superintendent circles the wagon, and then his posse cover the rear. That's what happens with this. And I think you're right. It's because of the broken window theory. They're trying to hide the deficiencies in the school system, which there are many. When you look at the real numbers that are out there and not the massaged numbers, it's like right now, Rockdale County rates 164 out of the 221 systems that are in the state, and that's public and private, right? So that means we're in the bottom 50% of school systems. Danielle, they all on this meeting we just watched, you and I went in, they would not admit that we have problems in the school system.
Right. Right.
And that will continue more failure by not admitting we have problems to address.
Right. When they talked about Saturday school for failing kids, I about fell out. Saturday school is like breakfast club, right? That's like detention, like double detention, right? Saturday school is punishment. Do not make students who are already struggling come to Saturday school, because that's going to lead to dropouts. That is not the answer.
No, it is not the answer. I agree 100%. My daughter had an issue. One of my daughters did when she was in the fourth grade. No, she was in the third grade, and she brought some homework home, and she was reading this book, and I was helping her with her homework, and she had read this little story, and I was working with her, and I said, "Okay, now tell me what you just read." She looked at me. Okay, she just looked at me, and I said, "Okay, let's try this again. Why don't you reread this, and let's talk about what they're doing." So she reread it. She said all the words perfectly, Danielle. I mean, it was like a parrot. You know what I mean? She said all the words perfectly. And then I asked her again, and she really couldn't. And she started to, I thought she was going to get ready to cry. I said, "How about this?" I said, "I know you're tired. You had a long day. Let's not worry about this right now." I said, "You just go off and play." I said, we'll do something about this later." So I made an appointment, went and talked to the teacher. And the teacher told me, "Well, we think she's okay. Her test scores say she's okay." Okay. So I said, "Well, have you actually ever sat down and had her read something to you and then tell you what she read?" And the teacher just looked at me, didn't answer the question. I said, "If you want to, we can bring her in here." I said, "It's not going to be good." I said, so she said, "Well, let me go get the counselor." So she immediately went and got somebody else, because she didn't want to have this conversation with just,
she went for backup.
Yep. So we were having this conversation, and I said, "Look, guys," I said, "it's clear that she's falling behind, that she's having some issues." I said, "I just want to fix the problem." I said, "I don't want to become a problem.
Right.
I want to fix the problem." I said, "So do you offer programs?" "Well, yeah, we offer programs." They said, "But she'd have to stay after school, and we don't provide transportation, and you'd have to provide transportation. I said, do you think that's a problem? I said, I'm coming here because my child I know is having reading comprehension problems. I said, do you think I'm going to have a problem coming and picking her up an hour after school? No. Let's schedule this. Let's start this. Let's get her back on track so she catches up and doesn't fall further behind. I said, staying an hour after school 2 times a week is not an issue with me. We'll make sure somebody comes and get her. But there was like, first of all, the test score said she was okay. Well, you don't really want her to stay an hour after because you got to come get her. I mean, Danielle, it was jumping through hoops, but it was something that I pushed for and I made it happen. And today, with parents being busy trying to work, with the way taxes are, medium income in Rockdale County, I went to a meeting the other day. It's nobody in Rockdale County, if you listen to this, can afford a house in Rockdale
Right.
County
Right.
if you actually listen to it. So these parents are overwhelmed.
Right.
So they do depend on the education system to actually, I think, a little too much, don't be involved enough, but it's a burden I think we're going to have to step in and do.
And let's be clear, those teachers didn't want your kid to stay after school for extra help because they would have to stay and give her extra help. That
Yes.
they did not care about you having to drive and pick your child up. They didn't want to have to stay and help your kid after school. But I agree with you. Um, but yeah, I mean, you have to find creative solutions, right? Because maybe the parents are working a couple jobs to pay those. Alex and I talked about this on our show that the jobs report just came out, and that the White House is all excited about all these extra jobs, and all these people have taken jobs, and it's second jobs. There's not been a single increase in the number of full-time, like, first jobs. It's all people taking second jobs to make ends meet because prices are so high that they just can't do it on one salary anymore. So, imagine if that's the parents of your kids. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. These kids need extra help, and somehow it's gonna have to come from somewhere. So, let's talk about you brought up money, let's talk about money. Um Do you have specific ideas for cutting first of all, let's just start with cutting waste in the school system.
I do have specific ideas, Danielle. We have that they talk about the district office, central office. I found it interesting. One of the candidates running, who is a former administrator and maybe has worked in one of these district office positions before, protecting that
Okay.
position. Okay.
Mhm.
So, but this is the thing about it. You've got a district office that has 53 employees that has a $6.8 million budget. That everybody there is making over $100,000. The majority of the people in that central office are making over $140,000 a year. I think we need to look and see, if we've got 3 and 4 assistants of something, maybe we don't need 3 or 4 assistants. Maybe we only need one.
Right.
I think the first place that I looked at, Danielle, is to look to do drastic cutting at the central office, because I do not look at these as key support individuals. They are not teachers. They're not boots on the ground. Let's actually see what we really need in that central office, and let's cut that, because you not only cut salaries, you cut benefits. And
Right.
the second place I look at cutting is vehicles. The Rockdale County school system has 46 support vehicles that these support employees take home.
What are those? I've heard people throw that around. What does that mean?
It means they have a take home vehicle.
Literally, they get like work cars. And
Yes.
the car is not involved in them doing their job.
No,
Like they're not driving students around.
no, they just get a car to take home. And so that Daniel, I run a fleet of vehicles, right? I have about that many fleet of vehicles that I run out of my division in Atlanta, in Conyers, right? That's a big expense. It's a big undertaking. So two main reasons we can cut right away. Two main things. We can cut central office staffing, and we can cut those 46 vehicles down to a reasonable number of a motor pool that can be shared to do things like you say. If we have to move
Go to
teachers,
conferences and
that's
stuff.
right.
Do
Yes,
other I've worked at multiple different counties, and okay, maybe it happens and I just don't know it. Is that a normal thing? I've literally
it
never heard
has
of that.
become a normal thing.
Okay,
That
I've been
that
out of
has
school for a
become the
while.
norm. right?
Okay.
And I think we have another problem, besides that, we have too many people that don't live in the county that work here that aren't vested in the county that are in those high level positions. I'm not talking about the teaching positions. I'm
Right.
talking about decision making positions. When you have decision makers that don't live in the county, they're not vested. The number one person who is not vested because he doesn't live here and has that $300,000 a year
Don't say
salary
the
is the
superintendent.
superintendent.
Shut up.
Superintendent does not live in the county. His kids go to private school in another county. And we think he's going to have the best interest of this county at heart. No, he does not. This individual is very polished. He is very charismatic, but he is also a narcissist. And I said that on this show. I won't say it on the interviews and all that, but I got a little more flexibility here, right? And when you just the things that he tells the board members they can't do, you can't do. I spoke to a former board member not long ago that he had a conversation with the sheriff and the chief of police about some discipline matters, and it wasn't specific to any specific kid. It was in general. He sent the county attorney on him for an ethics violation. You're allowed to have those in general conversations. I just read you, correct?
Right.
I
Yes.
just read you Georgia state code that says they can't enact any policy that prevents me from having a conversation that has been had in general population, in a general meeting. None. But they'll do that. They'll sick that the board attorney on you to try to intimidate you, to get you to back off. So Danielle, two things: we can cut central office, and we can cut those vehicles, and that will be millions of dollars
Right.
alone right there.
Yeah, I can't even
I
imagine the
estimate we can cut at least $5 million just in those two things. And then you and I both know you can look at any budget, Danielle, any budget, and I can tell somebody you can't come back to me unless you have a 5% cut. They're able to cut 5%
yeah.
easily.
They're gonna find
Easily cut 5%.
7% in case you knock 2% out.
That's right. They will be able to find that because there is wasteful spending. And when we come back and say it's 88% of that budget that's going toward salaries and benefits, tells me something. We've got some high end people somewhere
Right.
that are
Yeah.
making, and that includes those vehicles and all that nonsense, is what it includes. We need to really take a deep dive into that budget and see what are we actually spending that's being allocated to that 88%. And let's look, because I guarantee if we do a deep dive, we're going to find things that are allocated to personnel that should be allocated somewhere else. That's why we need a forensic audit to know what's going on in Rockdale County with the spending.
Right. I have a question I want to ask you. And then CJ asked about how citizens can ask for a new superintendent. Let's put a pin in that. I do want to ask you that question. But while I've got you on money, I have a specific question from one of your constituents. And it's that the board can ask legislators to raise the amount of the exemption for people 65 and over from apparently it's at 50,000 now, and that the board can go to the legislators and ask to raise it to, I guess, an amount specified by the Board of Education. What do you think about that? And
I actually would support that, Daniel, but I support something a little more extreme.
of
Okay.
course you do. Go on ahead.
I actually support seniors that by the time they get to be 72, that they're totally exempt from property taxes in Rockdale County. That would be Board of Education, city, and the county. And let me just explain. If people say, "Oh my God, you're gonna bankrupt everybody," no, we won't. We start at age 65, phasing you out. At 72, you become exempt. Average life expectancy for a Georgian is 65 and a half years old. We will have people that will make it to 76. Some will go over. Some will pass away before they even get the exemption. It will average out. We have to work with the tax office. We have to work with our budget people to determine what that average is of these homes coming in and out of the tax rate. And we have to operate within a budget that we can afford to. I'll tell you, we've talked about the budget has just grown crazy over the last 6 to 8 years, right? Like 6, 8 years ago, it was $150 million. Now it's 205. You can't tell me a lot of that's not fat and
Yeah,
waste,
that's
right?
fat.
But let me tell you what it is. Those properties were increasing. We were getting those fat tax increases, so they were finding
Right.
ways to spend that money. If they had 200 million, they had 200 million last time and had to spend 205. So they had to actually borrow 5 million from their funds balance to actually balance the budget. That you heard them say in this last meeting, we've balanced the budget every time.
I
They
was gonna ask
balanced
you
the
about
budget
that.
by borrowing money.
Okay.
They didn't truly balance the budget with the money they had on hand. They actually had to go into fund balance, borrow $5 million and balance the budget. So that's not actually
That's not a
balancing the
balanced
budget.
budget. Okay.
No, it's not.
Okay. Um, let's go ahead and answer CJ's question. How do you get a new superintendent? What do you do?
You know, this is how you get a new superintendent, and this is reality. When I was the chairman of a certain party a few years ago, I had it put on the ballot. Do you think the superintendent's contract should be renewed? And that was the year before his contract was renewed. 60% of the people that answered that question said no, that he should not be returned as school superintendent. So that answer is also part of the question you asked at the beginning of the show. Are people aware? Well, apparently 60% of the people who answered that question knew at that time the superintendent is a big part of the problem with the educational system in Rockdale County. So we can do things by starting petitions, emailing our school board members. But I think you heard a big problem in this past meeting about these particular board members who hold office now. They all said that you, the constituents and taxpayer, don't matter. It was 100% about the student, and they were going to have to do what was best for the students, even if it was bad for you.
And they spent the last 10 minutes of the meeting talking about how great the county was and how great they couldn't separate out the fact that they had successful students from the fact that they had a failing school system, because the people moderating the meeting were highly successful students, but the exception does not prove the rule. How many times we got to say that?
Well, and Daniel, I answered that question quite uniquely, didn't I? I answered
Yeah, you
it
did.
in a futuristic way. I said, let me say this is June. And I'll answer this question as this is June. The citizens of Rockdale County decided to make a change and elect new school board members. Those new school board members in January are going to come in and they're going to hire a new school superintendent who is going to be the right person to lead this school district in the correct way after January of next year. Danielle, the only way, and I'm just going to be real with the citizens, the only way we can do as many petitions as we want, go to as many board meetings as we want, say we don't like you as much as we want. The only way is to elect Larry Cox, Justin Kinney, Tanae Davis, and Darlene Smith. That's the only way, because you have to change that school board. You heard it. All in those incumbents stuck to the party line. They were on there today backing up what the superintendent has been telling them for the last 6 years. They're all drinking the Kool-Aid and buying into the superintendent's polished, charismatic presentation. And it's not reality.
Right. So
You've got to elect new people, and
yeah.
it starts with Justin Kinney, Tanae Davis, and Darlene Smith.
Yeah, so to fine line that, the Board of Education decides whether or not to renew the contract of the superintendent. If the answer is no, we want to replace the superintendent, it's the Board of Education that then does the headhunting and finds the candidates, interviews, and selects the new superintendent, correct?
And it's you can actually have the state board help you do. They can
Okay.
actually interview candidates and do an initial thing, and then the county board comes in and fine tunes it. In Henry County, they're actually looking for a new superintendent right now. They're doing something quite unique, Danielle. Do you know what they're doing?
I have no idea. What are they doing?
They're actually asking the citizens what they would like to see in a new superintendent.
Really?
Really? Do you think this current board would ask the city? You heard it today. Be real. Do you think they would ask the citizens what they thought needed to be the characteristics the new superintendent need to
I
have?
think they might to make it look like just like they massage the numbers to make it look
They wouldn't
like and
listen to you.
but no, but they would get the answers that they want regardless of the data that they collected.
Yeah.
I think
So
is
I mean,
exactly what they would do.
but yeah, I mean, so when we look at this, if we really want a new superintendent, and this thing about it, Danielle, it we don't have to wait until the superintendent's contract is up either. So if you elect the new board members in January when the new board is convened, the new board can give the current superintendent 6 month severance and send him on his way. That's it used to be 3 months, but this board changed the policy because I think they foresaw something maybe going to happen.
When's his contract up?
He just got it renewed in July for 3 years.
Jesus. For how long?
3 years. The customary in Georgia is a 2-year renewal, and they renewed him for 3 years. Customary 2-year renewal in the state of Georgia. They extended his for 3 years.
That's longer than it will take to lose your accreditation.
Yes, and I'll tell you, Danielle, this is reality, right? I speak to people out here on the street all the time. More and more of them are realizing we have a problem with the school system. They realize we have a problem with with taxes. They
Mhm.
realize we have a problem with the money not being spent properly. And then last week they asked for an audit, and these guys circled the wagon and protected the rear. Everybody on the board immediately became an audit expert. That was the craziest thing I ever saw. Everybody on the board became an audit expert. The chairman was banging that gavel all over the place. Enough of this conversation. And then I asked one of the board members afterwards, have you guys ever considered having a class on Robert's Rule on actually how to run a meeting, because they don't run a meeting according to Robert's rules. Then the attorney is reminding the chairperson, well, you've got to ask if there are any whatever, and she's banging the bell. I know, and exactly like that, right? So there needs to be a change. I mean, we want to talk about they're afraid of me getting elected because they think I'm a dynamic individual who may not follow the rules. No, anybody who knows me needs to know one thing. I'm an extreme rule follower.
Yeah, you are absolutely a rule follower.
I am an
That's the
extreme
problem.
rule follower.
Yes.
The problem is I'm going to follow the rules and expect them to follow the rules.
Right.
And this thing about it, what they say are the rules or have perceived as the rules, I am going to find out what the real rules are and demand that we follow the real rules
Right.
and that we follow the actual policies and procedure that are in place. And if they're bad policy, I am going to demand and suggest and motion that we change the policy, Danielle.
Right. Let's talk about safety. This is one that I mean, this is a hot button issue for everybody. I've not been in a Rockdale public school, but I mean, I know what schools are like. So, um, what issues do you see around safety in schools? And what can the board even do? Again, I'm not really sure what your purview is for acting.
Well, the board, this is the deal. We all have to remember something, right? The board employs the superintendent.
Right.
It is the superintendent's job to run the day-to-day operation. But if I am your employer and I come to you as a collective and say, hey, I think we need to look at these changes and do these things, as the person that knows that this collective group can send me packing any day, you're going to give me six. We're going to change that also back to 3 months instead of 6 months severance. But these individuals are my employer.
Right.
And even though I have day-to-day operation, they still have influence and guidance over the system. And we do. But you have these superintendents who flex that muscle because it states they have day-to-day operations. They have day-to-day operations. But the school board can advise. First, we have a big problem in Rockdale County. Superintendent and the sheriff have a rift.
Okay.
The superintendent doesn't want the sheriff department involved in the school system. Reason he doesn't want them involved in the school system, we have a major discipline problem in the school system. We have crimes that are occurring in the school system that are felonies on a weekly basis, and they are being covered up by policy that the superintendent has acted that they don't report these crimes. Okay. First of all, what we have to do is we have to change the policy that, yeah, these things are crimes and they have to be reported. We have to reestablish a relationship with the sheriff's department. We need, especially with the extreme discipline problems we have in the school system, we have to bring the sheriff's department back into the school system. I firmly believe that. The superintendent wanted to start his own police department within the school system.
Shut
We,
up. No,
we
he
have an
didn't.
individual who has a hard time running the school system who wants to become Marshall Dillon. Get real.
Well, and I know that you know this, Larry, but discipline is something that you have to report to the state. And
Danielle, that's why they did these policies and they don't report this stuff to the state because it doesn't affect their numbers. Thank you,
yeah,
Danielle. You got to the point. That's why.
I'm sorry. I jumped your story. I'm
No,
sorry.
but I'm glad you got it. You understood where I was going.
Yeah,
You
and
knew this.
and there are different levels. Like there's, discipline without bodily injury, there's discipline with bodily injury, and then there's some kind of discipline that involves outside interaction, which would be calling the police.
You had a teacher that had her leg broken by a student last year and only got 1 year. Viciously attacked, broken limb.
Dude, that's what I mean, not that case, but that's why I left the classroom in the middle of my contract and never I have yet to walk back into a public school, and that's why. Because I was attacked by a student, was in I don't think you know this, but was in physical therapy for 2 years. Yeah,
But Daniel, I'm telling you,
I 100% understand.
it's
Yes.
horrific in the school system right now with the discipline problem, right? And if we don't get that in check, we've got to bring the sheriff's department back into the school system, and we've got to start reporting crimes. And you don't worry about the fact you've got to report it to the state because they talked about in this past meeting, put it in the students first. Are you actually putting the students first when you're letting them attend a system where their safety is in question every single day?
To people from it's not trying to keep the threat out of the school. They're in danger from other students.
Yes. Well, this is, I'm aware of a meeting that occurred, right? So there was a meeting that occurred, and they wanted to enact a policy that if a student was attacked, and that student was attacked, defended themselves, they would also be suspended. They wanted to enact the policy that the teachers or other staff were not permitted to intervene in the interaction. So what that means is that an aggressive student is allowed to pummel and beat to death a student, and no one is allowed to stop it until that person decides to just quit beating you. Daniel, that's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
But I talked to another friend of mine who is in the judicial world. They said that is a trend that's going in the educational system now, and that is a dangerous trend.
Yep. Well, the zero tolerance, the you get in trouble for retaliating, that's old. Like I saw a kid in Grayson High School, and this had to be the early 2000s, who he got and I was there. I saw it happen. He got jumped in the hall, so he fought the kid off of him. So they both got disciplined. The kid who got jumped was on probation, so he got revoked, went back to jail because he got in trouble in school, and that was one of the conditions. And he got jumped, and it was a mistaken identity. The kid that jumped him thought he was somebody else. So had absolutely nothing to do with him, but it was zero tolerance. And yeah, yep, it is, yes. It goes years back, and it's not okay, but they say that, they don't know, who started it. They can't sort out who did what to whom, so they just suspend everybody. Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, that corporate punishment is not a good thing.
Mhm.
It's not
Yeah,
a,
and
and saying that staff aren't, allowed to break something up, and you have to stand and watch somebody get beat until the other person's just so tired they can't beat anymore. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that we would find a coach. We would send a coach in to drag them apart, and they always would. But this was 20 years ago. Um, all right. So we've covered safety. We talked about do you wanna say anything else about budget before we move on? I'm sorry, I think I dragged us off of that one, and I know that's a big one for you.
Now, I think we really need to look at the spending, Danielle. And I think, and my opponent actually mentioned something the other day because I've got some stuff on my platform, and I know she's went and read my platform, and I talk about cutting the budget 5% each year for 4 years, doing a 20% savings, and letting that go back to taxpayers. Do I have the authority to do that? No, I do not have the authority to do that, but it is something I'm going to advocate for and fight for, and there's no reason we can't do it. I think we can reallocate funds. We can reallocate monies that are going to the district office. We can reallocate funds that are going to those vehicles. I
Right.
actually think we can. Once we look at the budget, we will find a lot of wasteful spending that we can cut out and reallocate to the classroom. Right. So there's what we do. But we will be able to find a 5% cut each year and pass that on to tax savings. And if we don't do it, then this is what I'm going to say, right? I won't be able to do it alone. But even though I'm recommending we vote for these other people right now, in 4 years when I'm up for reelection, and I'm a term limit guy, I only intend to serve 2 terms if I'm elected. I will ask, I tried to do these initiatives. These people didn't support me. If you want my initiatives to go forward, we need to run candidates to support the initiatives I want to do. You need to vote them in office. That's what I'll say. I
Right.
will advocate. I will recommend. I will motion for these things. I will fight for the things that I recommend. And if they're not approved by the rest of the board, and it's not personal, this is what the rest board members are going to be. This is not personal attacks on them. This is attacks against policy.
Right.
And they've got to start separating themselves from policy. I don't take attacks on me personally. I take it as these are the stances that I believe in. These are my beliefs. They're attacking my beliefs, and I pray they're not attacking me personally.
Right.
So the attacks that I do are against policy, and it's against things that they advocate for. It's not them as a person. So hopefully that the voters will see that you can do both. You can represent the constituents, and you can actually put priority of education for kids at the top also, and you can do both at the same time.
While we're talking about troubling trends, I'm gonna get you fired up for a second. So this was mentioned in both of the meetings that I've watched the past couple of days in which you were involved. And I want to remind folks about what happens when you privatize prisons, right? We see this happen in prison systems that get privatized. Everything costs money. The prisoners are treated like commodities. Sorry, the inmates are treated like commodities, right? Everything that happens to them costs money, and if they don't have money to pay for it, then they are treated as lesser than, right? The phone calls are exorbitantly expensive. They can't call their families. They're completely cut off from their lives. They can't buy things in the PX. And I mentioned those things because I'm seeing a trend, and it's not just Rockdale. I see it in other school systems too, where the um, operations within the school systems are being privatized. And I didn't know this had happened in Rockdale until somebody talked about it the other day, that custodians, the custodial, and I don't know what we're supposed to call them now. I call them custodians, but that housekeeping staff, that job had been outsourced. So these were not people who were part of the Rockdale County school system. They were brought in, paid to do a job, and apparently it didn't go well.
And it's still not going well because they are still that's still what we're operating under right now, Danielle.
And now they're talking about doing it with paraprofessionals, who are people who are brought in to work in the classroom with students to help alleviate the burden on the teachers. And I, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I'm a certified special ed teacher. I'm certified broad spectrum K through 12. So I've worked with students probably from, who just needed a little bit of help with reading comprehension, like your daughter, all the way to nonverbal. And it is not uncommon that those are the students that parapros end up working with. I had a classroom where all of my students had one-on-one parapros. So one student, one parapro all day long. So if bringing outsourcing parapros, like, I'm sorry, outsourcing custodians went badly, I cannot imagine what outsourcing people coming in working with the least of these among your students is going to look like. And I know that it's just a proposal, but just this is your time, not mine. Talk to me about that.
Danielle, it's not just a proposal. This superintendent starts everything like this, but I think
Okay.
he's running into a little bit of trouble because you saw the heat that those people were feeling today, right? They're already feeling, they're all, oh, no, no. I mean,
Mhm.
yesterday they were a little more aggressive about
Yep,
it.
yep.
Today they've backed off a little because they've been getting phone calls. People have
Okay.
been telling them, you need to back off on this. But this thing about this group of people, they'll say this stuff right now, back off a little bit, but in 2 months, if they get reelected, they'll back the superintendent and approve this.
Let me tell you, there is absolutely nothing on the face of the planet more aggressive than a mother with a special needs child when she thinks that the services that that child is legally entitled to are in danger. Y'all think you're already paying out a bunch of money in lawsuits for stuff folks have done wrong? You wrong one of those kids with putting them with a parapro that doesn't know what they're doing. Just
Well,
wait.
then, this is my concern with this, right? And this comes back when we look at priorities of this superintendent, right? So we look at a superintendent who last year manipulated when they did the reduction in force, right? He
Yes,
manipulated the numbers, and he's right. Technically, they did not eliminate any teaching positions. They just didn't bring any, you know what I mean? It was a technical thing, right? There were teaching positions eliminated, but they were able to manipulate, massage the numbers, and show on their formula that they didn't, but they really did. They did that to protect district office staff, the central
right.
office staff, because they did not reduce one person that made $140 a year. They actually have increased some of those individuals. Okay. So let me 1 second, right? So we're talking about right now, the benefits are what the factors. They're going to go up on these
Mhm.
individuals. So they say, oh, they're not going to lose benefit. They have the ability to get benefits through the company they're working for. Yeah, but you're talking about people, yeah, they make $13 an hour now. Let's say they're going to get a little bump to $15 an hour working through this outsource thing. Danielle, they're making $15 an hour. Do you think they're going to be able to afford a family plan of health and dental
Not even if
on
you put
$15 an hour?
every
No.
dollar that they make towards it, no.
No, they're not. So when we talk about the reality, you are talking about eliminating benefits for the lowest paid
Mhm.
employees in the school system, and that's crazy. It is plus they are just like you talked about. These are the individuals who are going to have that one-on-one with these kids who actually need that little bit of assistance, or those kids who need a whole lot of
Right.
assistance. These are critical individuals who are on the ground. And I'll tell you, I don't believe this school, I don't believe these current members. They're backing off a little bit right now because they're feeling a little bit of heat. But then you're going to hear at the end of the day, just because of what they all said students have to come first. And even though the taxpayers aren't going to like it, we're going to make these hard decisions. Those hard decisions are going to be whatever the superintendent tells them to do. They're going to do. Let me tell you what, if you keep this current Board of Education members, these BOE members, and this superintendent, then next year you will have outsourced parapros, Danielle. That is a reality. That is going to happen.
Larry, this is gonna sound awful, and I almost put it in the chat of the other meeting right in the middle, listening to those people talk. If Rockdale County reelects those same people to the Board of Ed, they deserve what they get. And that's awful to say, but it is absolutely true. if you reelect those people, you deserve what you get, and you're going to get more of the same, and you're going to lose your school board accreditation, or you're going to lose your school accreditation, and it's going to be devastating to property values.
And we're not going to lose that accreditation because of any school board member. If we reelect this, it will be because of the school board.
It's the culture of the school board, not a particular member. It's the culture of the school board and what they allow to happen. If what I'm hearing is true, then what they have allowed to happen and what they will continue to allow to happen, because ne'er a single one of them said anything that made it sound like they want to change. All they want is more of the same.
That please, sir, hit me again. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. They just want, somehow they think that their formula for having 70% students not reading at or above grade level, doing more of that is going to somehow change the outcome.
Danielle, it's not going to change anything.
No.
And it's sad that we're at this state, and it's what it is. But you're right. I mean, when the superintendent presented that as a proposal, man, that was more than a proposal. That was, let's get ready to roll this out. This is the shot over the bow, right? We're going to get it out there, get you guys used to hearing to it. Then it's going to do. They change where they graduate kids in this county, right? They now graduate at New Birth in DeKalb County. This school board, 3 of the members wanted to just have a discussion about why we're doing it and how much it cost and was it the right thing to do. There was a 4-3 vote to not allow discussion, Danielle. A 4-3 vote to not allow discussion of an issue. The Justin Kenney motioned to amend the agenda to allow discussion, and it went 4-3 to not allow discussion. They had a discussion the other night about an audit, the need, because the longtime CFO just left. Depends on who you've talked to, who have talked to this CFO, whether there's trouble with the finances, not trouble with the finances. I have people in the school system who have confided in me. There are some funny business that went on with some numbers, and it really needs looked at, okay? There are some accounts that don't add up. Now, from what I gather, it was not this former CFO, but the CFO was aware of it. The day before the superintendent announced that he retired, I'm doing air quotes.
Right.
There was an article in the Walton Tribune that he was being hired as the new CFO of the Walton County school system. The day before, Superintendent Oates at a board meeting said that the CFO was retiring. So the first portion of the discussion this week, well, they argued over the definition of abruptly leaving and what the definition of retirement was. Because one of the board members, Mr. Kenney, said he abruptly left. Superintendent says, I don't think we can define this as abruptly. Then Mr. Kenney said, well, you said he retired. He's actually going to work next door in the next county. Well, he retired from here, but he's working there. So,
that's not retirement.
That's not retirement.
Especially in the same field. Like you might retire from teaching and become, go work at the local Kroger or something. But if you leave one job in a field and you go to another job in the same field, that's not retirement.
But you had a board that when they didn't even bring it up for a vote, because they all said what their opinion was when they all did their comments.
Right.
You had 4 people who said there's no need for an audit because every one of them became a tax expert and an audit expert. Then we've got a certified CPA who says, I'm the most qualified person here to talk about this, but then in these daggone meetings doesn't even know how the tax rates calculate and said, We've lowered taxes because we've lowered the millage rate. Now, if that person really believes that, I'm going to make sure I never take my taxes to her.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Because you've not lowered taxes. Actually, you have increased taxes in Rockdale County 55% the last 6 years. That's reality. So, Danielle, you've got a clear problem here. You've got 4 board members who have drank the Kool-Aid, who will bite the cyanide pill if they're told to, and do whatever the superintendent tells them to do. And you're right. If we don't elect and clean house and do something different in Rockdale County, then unfortunately, like you said, you might deserve what you're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And if you're going to question those board members, Gail Davis Owens, it will be Mandy North, the person that I'm running against. It will be Heather Duncan, the person that Darnell Smith is running against. It will be uh, 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 Pam Brown, who is running unopposed. And it will be Akita Palmer, right? Those are the individuals who voted yes, who said yes. They didn't have to vote because they said yes. Pam Brown, Mandy North, Heather Duncan, and Akita Palmer. Every one of those candidates except Pam Brown has somebody running against them. That person running against them needs to be your choice because we can't trust these people. And let me tell you, they point blank said today in this meeting, we're not going to consider anything you say because we're going to put the kids first. That's going to be their excuse for everything they do. We put the kids first. We don't care that we're going to tax you out of oblivion and you're not going to be able to afford your home. We don't care that we're putting $13 an hour people in the poorhouse and they're not going to have health
Right.
insurance because we're doing it because it's what we got to do for the kids,
You know,
not what they
Larry,
have to do for the
I
kids.
told you, as soon as I hear somebody say that, I completely discount what they're saying. Back when I was teaching at Grayson High School, we had a joke that, and I can't remember where it started, but it was at the end of the day, it's all about the kids because that's what they would say when they wanted us to do something. Well, at the end of the day, it's all about the kids. So, and then whatever they wanted us to do was just, it was ridiculous. And this is the same thing. Right, you put it off on your concern or your interest in the kids, so you know that it's just bull, and like you said, and we didn't mention this, but I mean, I think everybody knows that, um, correct me if I'm wrong, but Rockdale County is 100% free and they're not 100% free and reduced lunch, but they're 100% Title One, right? So,
Yes.
that means that each school has I think it's over 50% free and reduced lunch. It's
Rockdale County has 72% of the kids are in poverty. That
Okay.
county says.
So, I mean, that's all you need to know. And I think it was Cheryl in the comments when we were talking about, I think it was when we were talking about the teacher telling you that you would have to make arrangements to pick your daughter up after school for her to get extra help. That I think it was when we were talking about that, that she commented that not everyone in Rockdale County is a two-parent household. And statistically speaking, based on the socioeconomic situation in Rockdale County, I would expect that there are many single parent households trying to make ends meet, trying to get kids to school, trying to get kids to extra support, extra practice, get their extra spelling done after school. It's a lot, right? It's a whole lot on these families that are trying to do their very best. And we know from research that kids who come from families where one or more stakeholder in their lives finished college are more likely to go to college because that's the culture that they come from, because those are the people that know what classes to put the kids in, what to encourage the kids to do. So even as hard as these people are working, chances are they're already kind of on their hind foot and they're working so hard to help their kids be successful. So the very least I think that the county can give them or can supply them for all the tax money that they pay is a successful school system and a safe school system to keep their kids in.
Well,
And Larry, that's your job.
none of them have touted this yet, but it's something you talked about accolades
Mhm.
earlier about, one of the things they do like to tout, and I'm surprised they've not touted this yet. They like to mention, and they probably haven't because they know what I'm going to come back with, right? They've not touted that this school board is an exemplary board. They have received this exemplary award. And I want to explain to people all that means. All that means is this: every school board member is required to take 15 hours of training. 15 hours of training. What that means is that
Wait, that's the end of
you
the list? I was waiting for the rest of the list.
no, that's the list. Like 15 hours of training, right? 15 hours of training. And then if you have them that they take like 10% more than that, if it's like if 7% of the board takes is over that, then they qualify exemplary, right? So that means every single board member has to take more than 15 hours for them to get their exemplary. And this is what I've said. If I'm elected, I will refuse to accept accreditation for any more than 15 hours. I haven't said that I won't take more
Right.
than 15 hours of training. I will not accept the accreditation for more than 15 hours, because until this school system improves, I am not going to accept a pretend award
Right.
that this board is exemplary of anything, right? Not going to. So I will take more than 15 hours of training, but I'm not going to turn them in.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going, because I'm not going to play this game where we pretend. And they like to put that thing with this gold platter, plated nonsense on their Facebook page and everything. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. This is what I like to call it, right? I like to call it, if you're able to tie your shoes and not get a DUI in the company vehicle, you're exemplary. That's what I call, tying your shoes, signing your name to the paper. You know what I mean? Not get caught
Right.
DUI. It's not a difficult, and plus they pay dues to these organizations that issue these daggone accreditations. So is it a real accreditation?
And you
No.
have to be a member. Let me guess, you have to be a member to get
Yes. Gotta be
the
a member.
accolades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. It is. So it's crazy, right? So
Yeah,
Danielle,
Charlotte says going to conferences counts as training.
yeah, it counts as training. Right.
Jesus.
So this is ridiculous. Danielle, you're right. So if Rockdale County has to wake up, right?
Mhm.
We've got to stick quick. And it's like you're talking about. Okay, my person I'm running against, she said I'm in the middle of my third term. The woman can't count. She's an accountant. She's got 6 months. I mean, not 6 months. What is it? 8 months left on her fourth year of her third term. Is that halfway through? No.
Yeah.
She's in the last year of her third term. That means she's have served 12 years. And
Okay.
during her tenure of 12 years, that is when this school system has plummeted. Pam Brown, this will be her second term going for 3, a plummeting 8 years. Heather Duncan, 2 terms, 8 years, plummeting. Akita Palmer,
Mhm.
4 years, plummeting. I mean, we have nosedived in those 4 years, right? So come on, people. You have overseen a horrible school
Right.
system, and you're worried about putting somebody like me on the board who's going to hold people accountable. You guys are ridiculous. That's just my guys. Vote if you want to see action. You want to see something happen. You want to see Terry Oates sent packing back to Henry County, and let's get a superintendent who actually lives in this county. And if they have kids, their kids will go to school here. You vote for me. It changes the majority of this board. I will, at the first meeting, ask to go to executive session to discuss personnel. And that issue will be the removal of Terry Oates.
Larry, we to be, completely transparent, we didn't talk about anything um that we were going to talk about before. We didn't talk about questions,
No, and,
nothing.
and, and I
So,
deliberately didn't talk to you, and you
right.
deliberately didn't
Yep.
talk to
Yep.
me. And
And
it was
Alex
just
didn't
like
I don't
what
think Alex has been here, but Alex wouldn't talk to me about it either. Just
no,
so
and it
that
was and it was just like this is what
so
time we're going to come on. This is what we're going to do, because we wanted this
yep.
to totally be you coming
Yep.
on and interviewing a candidate.
So, Larry, I want to ask you a question, and I don't know if this is out of bounds. I apologize, but um, are you comfortable telling people who else you support for? I mean, I think we could probably figure it out, but who else, just to help people know, because
I
it's a
think I
lot.
I think I said it earlier. This is who Larry Cox is going to vote for
Thank you.
the
Go
school
ahead.
board. Okay, Larry Cox is going to vote for Larry Cox.
Right.
Larry Cox is going to vote for Justin Kinney.
Yep.
Larry Cox is going to vote for Tanae Davis. Larry Cox is going to vote for Darlene Smith. I will not be voting for the other folks. Pam Brown is on the ballot. He wasn't going to run for office, but Tucker Cox told me that he feels so strongly that Pam Brown doesn't need to be on the school board. If you write him in, he will serve in that position.
That
So
old
I will
Tucker is
be
a
writing
dog
in
with a
Tucker.
bone.
I will be writing in Tucker Cox against Pam Brown.
Right, she's
That's
unopposed,
my
right?
slate, huh?
She's unopposed?
Unopposed. So Tucker Cox, and I, you know what, guys, that sends a message. When you write in a 12-pound Chiweenie against a 250-pound candidate, that sends a message.
Alright. That's enough. That's enough.
I've shaved probably 50 pounds off of that.
Stop it. Anything else? I was looking back through my notes. I think we have hit everything. Do you have anything else you wanna talk about before we go?
No, I think I've gotten enough trouble tonight.
Um, yeah, I think if we get sued, I'm gonna say I was under the umbrella of This Week from Rockdale. Um, dude, it is hard not to say This Week in Rockdale, to say This Week from Rockdale.
I know.
Um,
Yeah, but
I
I've
ju
been doing this a long time. This show a long time
You
now.
have, you've been doing a great job. Y'all, friends in the chat, if there are any questions, I've been kinda trying to watch them,
Yeah,
but
and I've went over a little bit. We have, and that's fine because I'm. This is, I mean, Board of Education candidates don't get a lot of
right.
opportunities, right? And it's one of the most important positions we have, but underestimated and underrated.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary. Yeah, and I was talking to a couple of your constituents about how I wanted to ask you hard questions and give you the opportunity to talk about these important issues because when you're up there left to your own devices, you will start talking about an issue and then get all inflamed and start ranting. So I thought that this would be a great opportunity for you to talk about these issues with somebody that would draw you back to the road when you start to wander. So that was my goal was I knew that you had some really important points to make. And I knew I was going to keep your feet to the fire, but I wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to make those points. So, um,
And I think I did. And I think yesterday at the forum I was at yesterday, the live one, a lot of people come up to me and they actually told me, they said, Mr. Cox, we were going to tell you this, uh, uh, that uh, there's no doubt where you stand on issues because you tell us what you think and what you feel.
right.
So they were appreciative of the fact that they felt that I didn't sugarcoat a lot of things and that I tell them exactly how I feel and what my opinion and position are on
Yeah.
those things.
I'm going to let you go. Let me ask you one more question. This is just an absolute passion of mine is we see with struggling learners and specifically learners from low socioeconomic situations what I don't know what they call it now in the research. We used to call it the digital divide, where those kids don't have devices, or more specifically, they don't have high speed, reliable internet at home. So they can't take advantage of opportunities that other students can. I know that during the pandemic that Rockdale rolled out buses with mobile hotspots on them, right? Am I right about that?
You're correct.
Um, but I expect I mean, you can't do that 24/7, right? So what do you do with little Johnny who I know that y'all have the one-to-one device, one student program, right? Where
They
each
do, and I would continue to support that.
But what about is there anything that is being done or can be done for students in situations where, a single whatever the situation is, they don't have internet at home. They don't have access. So they have a device, but they can't use it at home because there's
Well,
nothing to
I do not know if the devices have internet, built-in internet, right? So I would like to find that out, and I would like to find out because there are things that I don't know that I'm going to, find out.
Right.
And what I would want to do, you're correct, and what I would like to do is this, right? I would like to let's just say that we have kids that don't have accessibility to the internet. Let's see that they bring the devices home. I would like the devices to have internet capability, internal internet capability,
Right.
just like you can have on your in your vehicles and on your phones and the internal hotspot,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I would recommend that, but I would like to partner with the AT&Ts and the
Right.
T-Mobiles,
Yes, somebody. Yeah.
yeah, I would like to partner with that, and I think that's great PR for those companies, and I think we could actually do that. I think we could work out something and partner with these entities to help struggling kids who live in poverty to get have an opportunity to get ahead.
Great. Yeah, I just wanted to put that bug in your ear because I've heard people talk about the devices, but my concern is students that well, anyway, you heard my concern. We don't
Yeah,
need to
and it is an
dive into
actual
that.
concern, and I agree with that,
Yeah.
and I would love to do that, right? I think it's something we need to look at, and you're right, it does no good to have the devices
Right.
if they can't access the internet,
Yeah,
and I think,
Lisa Lancaster says the government is ending the Affordable Connectivity Program for lower income households in April, and I haven't heard if they have voted to extend it. That's good information.
yeah, and then like I said, but I think we can partner with these providers, right? Because they make a lot of money, and I think just the good PR that they would get, and you approach them. I mean, I've done approach businesses about things all the time,
Right.
and they're willing to do things to actually promote stuff. Bill Campbell, AT has announced they will be spending $58 million this year to improve internet
I think
connectivity.
that's $5 billion. Five it looks like
Oh,
a
that
5
is
B.
5 billion. Yep, 5 billion.
That's a bunch of dollars this year to improve
Yeah.
internet
So you,
connectivity.
Danielle, you're 100% right. Right. I mean, that's an important thing because we had the discussion yesterday that the technology portion of education and technology in this world and being able to be proficient with these devices is a necessity in the job
100%.
force moving forward. And if we don't acknowledge it, recognize it, and actually move in that direction and prepare the students moving forward, we're not preparing
Yep, you're
them for the
hobbling
real
them.
future, not the real
100%.
future.
All right, Larry, one more question from the chat. How can people get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me. They can send me an email at Larry at votelarrycox.com, or I'm going to do something here right now because I'm not hard to reach. If you go to my Facebook page actually and look at my detail stuff, my phone number is actually on there. So I'm going to actually type something in there right now.
And while you're doing that, I am Fit Danielle Reads over on the YouTubes. Feel free to come find me for food and fitness and books to read. I post videos on Mondays and Fridays with some shorts in between. And I think we
Okay, I just typed two things in there, right? So there's my phone number, which is not hard to find. I mean, if you go on Facebook, it's on my profile stuff, right?
right.
I don't hide from anybody. And then at Larry at larrycox.com, a lot of people will go on Facebook and they'll private message me. I'll answer those. Like I said, and I actually do talk to people. You can talk to people in the community. I answer all my emails. I answer all my phone calls. I get real busy on the phone during the weekdays because I run a business. But it's not a big thing. And I did want to emphasize one other thing, right? I run a business. I bid jobs. I manage the jobs, and I run a multi-million-dollar business. Multi-million-dollar bidding, multi-million-dollar contracts, multi-million-dollar business, contract negotiations, hiring and firing employees. So everything that the board oversees, I actually do in real life.
Right. Yes.
So I have practical, like accountants. Let's just be real. Accountants put numbers together on a spreadsheet. I actually create the issues that create the numbers.
Right. Yeah.
I
You have to
actually have to understand the
execute.
numbers
Yes.
before they go to an accountant. So when an accountant says they're qualified because they can put numbers on a spreadsheet, I'm more qualified because I actually have to build that spreadsheet. I
Yes.
build those numbers that create a spreadsheet, and I have to actually understand a profit and loss sheet.
Yes. I know I said one more question. This is the last question, but this is pertinent. I think Lisa asked if you're gonna have the other candidates
If
on. Who's coming on?
this has been always been my policy that I followed from Alex, and
Yep.
we've always said is if a candidate reaches out and asks me to be on the show, they're on the show. Anybody who has been on the show or is coming on the show, they've actually asked me to be on the show.
Right.
So any candidate that asked to be on this show will be scheduled to be. If even my opponent wants to come on and have a one-on-one, they can come on and have a one-on-one.
So y'all, if you want to hear from your candidates on Larry's show, reach out to them. Invite them to reach out to Larry and get him on the show.
Because they won't be able to come back to you and say, I asked him and he said no.
Yeah.
That won't happen.
All right. Let's let these people go. Y'all, thank you so much, Larry. Thank you for having me. It has been an absolute pleasure. Y'all, thank you for your kind comments. Thank you for being so welcoming. I have enjoyed being here. And y'all, I give you your post 1 Board of Education new representative, Larry Cox.
Thank you, everybody, and I will see you next week.
Bye, guys. Thank you.